At the start of the movie, we're introduced to our protagonist, Peabody, a sentient and highly intelligent dog with a wide range of talents. Unfortunately, due to Peabody's extremely high IQ, he was never adopted by a human and had to live the entirety of his puppy years alone. However, despite lacking a loving family, the lonely dog was determined to excel in life. Armed with his high intellect and unshakable will, Peabody goes on to graduate from Harvard and quickly becomes one of the greatest inventors of his time. Over the years, the gifted dog invents many cultural and technological gadgets. However, of Peabody's accomplishments, his most prominent invention remains a time machine, which he simply refers to as the Wayback. Being a very formidable creation, Peabody keeps the invention a secret and only tells his adoptive son, Sherman, of its existence. Together, the duo occasionally uses the Wayback to travel back in time, as they explore multiple ancient civilizations. One afternoon, father and son head to France in the late 1700s as they embark on a mission to witness the French Revolution firsthand. On arriving at their destination, the duo blends in with the French upperclassmen as they attend their lavish ball. However, this doesn't last long as the revolution begins shortly after, with the poor French masses storming the party. Amidst the chaos, Peabody and Sherman get separated as the genius dog is captured, alongside the aristocrats, and sentenced to death. The outraged masses quickly place Peabody in the guillotine as an assigned executioner prepares to murder him. An anxious Sherman stands among the spectators and helplessly cries out to his dad. However, Peabody remains calm and reassures Sherman that he'd be fine. Moments later, the executioner releases the lever, causing the guillotine's blade to drop down on Peabody's head as Sherman faints in horror. The vengeful crowd jubilates in celebration. However, their excitement is short-lived, as they realize that the remnant of the guillotine shop is merely a decapitated coconut, thus revealing that Peabody had successfully enacted an escape. Right then, the genius dog emerges from the underground sewers and pulls the fainted Sherman in. As the duo races away from the scene, shocked to see him alive, a curious Sherman inquires about his escape, prompting Peabody to explain his trick. It turns out that the genius dog carefully calculated and exploited a series of events, such as the sun's reflection and the city's sewer system, to free himself from the trap. Moments later, the duo gets discovered and cornered by a gang of angry French guards. In defense, Peabody fights off and defeats the head guard in a fencing match, after which he tosses the sword in a boarded barricade, prompting a heavy release of water. While the rest of the guards get washed away, Peabody and Sherman get on a board and surf the gushing waves. Utilizing the methane gas in the area, the genius dog creates a fiery explosion that blasts them out of the sewers and into a nearby forest. There they locate the Wayback Machine as they board it and finally make their way home. The following day, Peabody takes his son to school as the young boy officially begins his formal education. On his first day of school, Sherman showcases an outstanding knowledge of history as he answers all of his teacher's questions. This act quickly earns him the admiration of his tutor. However, it in turn causes him to be despised by some of the students, including star pupil Penny. During lunch, an envious Penny confronts Sherman and fiercely bullies the new student. She holds the young boy by the neck, calling him a dog as the other students watch on helplessly. Left with no other option, Sherman bites Penny's arm and, as a result, inflicts significant scarring and bleeding. Minutes later, a teacher breaks up the fight, after which Mr. Peabody is summoned to the principal's office and informed of his son's involvement in the brutal accident. Peabody is shocked to hear this, as Sherman had previously never shown any acts of violence. However, before the concerned dad can raise any complaints, a Child Protective Service agent named Miss Grunion enters the room. Due to Sherman's fight, Miss Grunion suspects Peabody may not be a suitable guardian for a human child. In light of this, the service agent informs Peabody that she'd visit his home to gauge his competence as a guardian. Hence, if he fails her inspection, Sherman would ultimately be seized from him. Hearing this, Peabody decides to keep the pending visit a secret from Sherman and instead takes multiple proactive steps to prepare for the inspection. For starters, Peabody reprimands Sherman for his involvement in the fight and invites Penny and her parents over to reconcile their differences. On arrival, Peabody and Penny's parents head on to have dinner while their wards hang out together. A stubborn Penny still maintains and vehemently displays her hatred for Sherman. However, on Peabody's instruction, the young boy tries his best to bond with her. Unfortunately, in doing this, he unintentionally divulges the secret of his father's time machine. A naive Sherman takes Penny to the Wayback device and helplessly watches as she teleports to an unknown era. Seeing this, Sherman instantly races to his dad and informs him of the recent happenings. Naturally, Peabody's furious at Sherman for showing Penny the secret time machine. However, the genius dog quickly regains his calm and uses a hypnosis technique to place Penny's parents in a trance to prevent them from asking questions. Once the trance had been completed, father and son race to the Wayback Machine and trace Penny to ancient Egypt. There, they discover that the delinquent girl had gotten engaged to an Egyptian pharaoh. The duo tries to convince her to return home, but a stubborn Penny remains adamant about staying in ancient Egypt as she plans on inheriting the pharaoh's fortune once he passes. However, Penny's desire to stay is short-lived, as she soon discovers that it is customary for the pharaoh's wife to be killed on her husband's passing. Scared, she tries to back out of the engagement and return home with Sherman and Peabody. However, the Egypt royals forbid her from doing this as they capture Penny and imprison Peabody and his son in an underground crypt. Wasting no time, the resourceful dog finds a secret room leading to an exit. However, before they can cross the other side, the duo must carefully walk on a series of floor tiles, most of which trigger a booby trap. Using the tiles as marked carvings, a genius Peabody easily decodes the safe section and swiftly scales to the other side of the room. Mirroring his father's footsteps, Sherman swiftly passes the safe tiles as well, allowing him to cross over. However, unlike his dad, Sherman mistakenly steps on a wrong tile at the final set of stones, causing the crypt straps to activate and its walls to cave in. Seeing this, the duo instantly races to the next room, where they find a boat atop a slippery slide. With the crypt falling apart, father and son swiftly board the vessel, which transports them through a narrow exit leading outside. Luckily, the duo hits a rough but safe landing as the sand cushions their turbulent fall. Once recovered, the duo heads to the Egyptian palace where Penny's marriage ceremony is being held. Together, father and son infiltrate one of the palace's statues and speak through it as they impersonate the god of Anubis. From the structure, Peabody, disguising himself as Anubis, threatens to send a barrage of plagues to the Egyptian people if the ceremonies continued. Luckily, this ruse successfully convinces the officiating priest and the Egyptian royals to stop the ceremony. But unfortunately, his deceptive display doesn't last long as the statue eventually breaks due to the duo's combined weight, thus exposing their secret. Now discovered, Peabody and Sherman quickly rescue Penny and run away from an army of chasing angry guards. Fortunately, the trio narrowly makes it to the Wayback Machine as they swiftly board it and begin their journey back home. En route, Sherman converses with Penny and learns of the imminent visit from the child protection agent. The news greatly shocks him and sparks a massive fight between Sherman and Peabody as the young boy expresses his displeasure over his dad keeping secrets from him. However, before the duo can continue their argument, they suddenly run into a black hole that sucks their time machine toward it. The magnetic vacuum causes the Wayback to go into overdrive as Peabody desperately tries his best to steer it clear of danger. Luckily, the genius dog manages to power up the time machine as they speed off to yet another ancient period. This time, they are transported to 1184 BC, which marks the brink of the Trojan War. On arrival, Peabody and Penny discover that an angry Sherman had left the time pod and gone on without them. Worried, the duo searches for and soon locates Sherman in the nearby city of Troy, where they find him running from the ensuing war. Luckily, Peabody arrives right in time and saves Sherman from the attacking enemy forces. Meanwhile, Penny finds herself trapped in the historic Trojan horse and cries out to the duo for help as the structure swiftly approaches a nearby cliff. Hearing her screams, an assertive Peabody uses a rope to stop the statue's movement right at the edge of the cliff. On saving Penny, father and son also enter the Trojan horse to retrieve the young girl. However, Sherman mistakenly disrupts the structure's balance, causing it to resume its fall down the cliff. Seeing this, Peabody swiftly jumps and saves the two scared kids, blasting them out of the wooden horse as he sacrifices himself in the process. A shocked Sherman is horrified by the recent tragic events, but ultimately decides to return home with Penny. However, instead of returning to the present, Sherman sets their destination to a few hours in the past so he can meet an undead version of his father and ask for help. On setting his desired destination, Sherman receives a warning from the Wayback's processor. The time machine warns him against teleporting to a recent time period, where he already exists, as this could cause two versions of himself to occur in a single universe. When this happens, a fracture can develop in the space-time fabric, potentially causing the end of the world. A determined Sherman is greatly troubled by the warning, but decides to embark on the mission regardless as he and Penny return to his home. As the duo teleports a few hours into the past, they end up meeting the old version of Peabody in the kitchen. There, they tell him all that transpired during the last few hours and ask for help in saving his future self. However, before the genius dog can think up a plan, their conversation gets interrupted as Miss Grunion, the child protection worker, walks in. Coincidentally, the future version of Peabody arrives at the same time, thus revealing that he didn't actually die in the crash as they were previously made to believe. To make matters worse, the present-day Sherman also arrives at the scene, making two copies of father and son. Before both parties can wrap their heads around this, a wormhole appears, which sucks in both copies of Peabody and Sherman as they merge into a single original form. An already distrustful Miss Grunion, who watched the entire event unravel, declares the canine guardian unfit to be a parent and seizes Sherman. However, the daring young boy frees himself from her grasp and reunites with Peabody and Penny as the trio returns to the Wayback. On it, they try to travel back in time to correct their mess. However, they realize that the space-time continuum has been rendered unstable due to their two versions merging. Hence, they can no longer travel to the past. In addition, the unstable space-time dimension also incurs a series of wormholes that appear in the sky. From it, various prominent figures from different eras in the past, such as Einstein, Da Vinci, and George Washington, are transported to the present. In mere minutes, giant rocks and artifacts are also teleported to the present as they crush the city and threaten the destruction of the present-day world. To correct the fatal space-time abnormality, the group eventually deciphers that teleportation to the future would fix and reinstate the proper flow of time. With Sherman and Peabody's joint efforts, they successfully power the Wayback to its maximum capacity, and for the first time ever, use it to travel a few seconds into the future. As predicted, their plan works, and the emergent wormholes vacuum all the objects and people they previously brought to the present, thus returning them to their original time periods and reinstating the normal flow of time. Finally, the movie ends with a scene of Peabody taking Sherman to school, hence implying that the loving father had, once again, regained custody of his son. And that's a wrap for this animation recap. Subscribe to see more videos like this, turn on the notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.